I got the inspiration for this book because I have read other books by former heads of states and also books written by mainly journalists who covered events. In the first 2 years of Trump's administration, 18 different books were written about him. 2 years, 18 books. In these countries, our presidents come and go, and they don't even write their memoirs. And those of us who cover them and know a lot are sometimes afraid to write because of the repercussions. So I decided to start with the fourth John. And when the title was put out, people asked, why not the first, second, or third, but the fourth John? And for those of you who are wondering, when the first John first came onto the political scene, I wasn't born. In 1992, when he started the Fourth Republic, I was just starting school. When the second John took over in 2001, I was busy trying to see how I could pass my BEC. I was in the junior high school at the time. And in Ketekrachi, there are no newspapers, and we didn't have electricity at home, so obviously we didn't have television. I think our biggest asset at the time was a 6-battery tape my father owned. And anytime he was going to work as a night watchman, he would tie this tape with a scarf to ensure that nobody turned the knob. So I was totally cut out of the world, and I didn't know what really happened. In those days, Daily Graphic came to Ketekrachi, but a day after printing, and only 50 copies came to the district. And if your father was not a big man, you obviously did not have access. So I didn't know much about what happened at the time. When the third John took over, I was at the journalism school, and I didn't follow so much, and his tenure also had some issues. It didn't end naturally. For the fourth John, I had just started work as a full-time journalist a month to his substantive election and presidential tenure. As you may find in the prologue titled The Protagonist, Antagonist, and the Narrator, I confess that he was my political idol. I admired him and voted for him in 2012. Just after 2012 election, in January, somebody gave me a hint about a corruption scandal at JIDA. And that started what would become an enmity between myself and the administration or the government of my previous political idol. So I had opportunity to write and report about the things that happened. So deciding to write about that regime gave me an advantage because I had a first-hand account to some of the things that really happened. A journalist or an investigative journalist is like a hunter. What you tell people is not the whole story you hear. So sometimes you know more than you can put out. So when I decided to do this project, I picked up some of the pieces that may have been left because they were not so relevant to the journalistic work, and started to interview people. And I had very, very revealing pieces of information. The next question people often ask is, has the former president seen this, or does he know about this work? And what is his reaction? Yes, he knows about it. I had a pleasure of meeting him and then discussing the issues. He gave his inputs, and one thing he said was that in as much as he did not agree with me on some of the things I had written, he as a person would defend and protect my right to criticize him. And I think that is very exemplary for other politicians. If you look at some of the journalists who really wrote terrible things about the Mahama regime, and justifiably so, I was one of the foremost, but any time I had opportunity to meet him, whether as president or former president, his reception and level of tolerance has been exceptional, and I salute him for that. This book is not only about the happenings within the 4 years. I did some research and got a lot of information on some of the things that are happening now. And it appears if I should keep on writing about what happens from one regime to the other, a day may come when I can just take, for instance, the script in Mahama's regime, and wherever I see Mahama, I'll put a Kufuado there, and just change the names of the ministers, because a lot of the things have recurred. This book is not what people think it is. It is not to bring down one person or to praise another. It is to help build and consolidate our democracy. It is to help provide lessons for people who govern our country. And as journalists, I think we should be bold and fearless to be able to look into the eyes of those who lead us and tell them whether they are wrong or they are right. This is not the last of such a series. It is something I intend to do very often. And hopefully, very soon, another book would come out. But since we've exhausted the John dynasty, the title may be different. I would once again want to thank you all for making the opportunity to be here, those who are brave enough to show their faces, and those who are also hiding behind and pushing. Our elders say, if you find a bird dancing in the middle of the road, do not assume that that bird is crazy. Its drummers are perhaps in the nearby bush. There are lots in the nearby bush, and I'm happy some of you were able to make the time to be here. I have a friend who had to travel all the way from Burkina Faso to be part of this program this evening. He's a very private person, but I must say that friend is not called Kanazui. And he actually flew. He did not come to Ghana in a Ford expedition. Thank you so much for your presence, and I hope you will take the time to read and also provide your criticism. Growing up, I was one of the best students in my class. I was either first or first. And almost all the time on my report card, I saw excellent, excellent, excellent. Never have I seen perfect. So I may have done excellent things, but I'm here to reach perfection. So your output, your criticisms, and your pieces of advice and feedback would help me drive towards perfection. Thank you so much for your presence and for your time.